Hello again, and welcome back to Bible Talk with Ruth and Becky, reminding you of our motto, don't spend money. Even though we probably overspent for Christmas, I hope you and yours had a wonderful Christmas time, and let's plunge back into our Bible study.
First, I want to say a couple more things we aren't going to do. We're not going to ask for money. We are not going to tell you when the Lord's coming back, and we are not going to tell you who to vote for.
What?
Nope.
I hope we could manipulate people into voting for our favorite candidate.
Well, you need to demonize those who you're not supposed to vote for.
Never mind. All right. Now we plunge back into, get it, our study of Noah's flood.
Yeah.
And we'll begin at Genesis chapter 8, verse 20. After Noah and his family and all the animals have left the ark, which has come to rest in the mountains, plural, mountains of Ararat. And Noah comes out of the ark, and the first act that he and his family perform is to offer sacrifice to God. Becky, would you read chapter 8, verse 20 through 22, please?
Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled its soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease.
All right. God pledges to not destroy the earth in this way, even though people continue to be sinful. He has a plan for their salvation, which began before the creation of the world. We learn in New Testament letters like Colossians. Well, we'll see as we go through the flood, the end of the flood account and the end of Noah's story, that there continue to be parallels with the creation account in chapter 1.
Oh, I have a question.
I'm not surprised.
This verse that says, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. Does that mean that there's no such thing as global warming?
I'm looking, I don't see any global warming there. What do you think?
I believe that the world is going to end at some time, and I know there's going to be a lot of bad stuff happen before it does. So,
as I read it, the only thing it's talking about is the regular seasons of life will go on as they always have. There'll be seed time and a harvest time, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. It's not talking about no changes in climate or that kind of thing. It's just that regular cycles of nature will continue. There will be no interruption by destruction like the flood. That's my reading of it. Does that sound satisfactory to you?
yeah, and people who say there's no such thing as global warming will agree that there is such a thing as pollution, that you can pollute the water and pollute the air, and you can destroy habitat, and you can make things unlivable. As human beings, we can do that. So I don't know why they would say there's no such thing. So that's all I have to say.
My only response would be the current way of describing it is not global warming, it is now
Climate change.
Let's
Okay.
try to be PC here.
Okay.
All right, moving right along, we see the parallels with Genesis chapter 1, that in a sense God undid all creation that he had performed with the flood and makes a new start with Noah and his family. And just as they offered sacrifice in the early parts of Genesis, they offered sacrifice after the flood. And now God will bless Noah and his family just as he blessed Adam and Eve in the beginning. In chapter 9, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." If you study through the first 11 chapters of Genesis, we'll find that when God blesses people, there are two things involved usually. The first is fertility. That is, it'll be possible for them to continue to have descendants, to be fruitful and multiply, and thus fill the earth again with inhabitants. And the other part of the blessing is that they'll have food to eat. So that will continue here. But changes have come about because of the flood. Look at verse 2. "The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered." So there'll be fear and dread about human beings from the rest of the animal kingdom. But there's also a change in their dietary prescriptions. Every living thing, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you be fruitful and multiply, teem on the earth and multiply in it. So God provides a blessing. He increases and changes our dietary habits. How that came about, I don't know. If there had to be change in our digestive tract, probably not. But now we're allowed to eat meat as well as vegetation.
I have a question.
Again? Well, good.
There are a lot of people who take this commandment to not eat the meat with blood to say that you should not have a blood transfusion, among which was my father. He didn't believe that you should have blood transfusions because God said don't eat the blood. And I want to comment on that. I want you to comment on
You
that.
want me to comment
I
on
want
it?
you to comment on
How come I always have to comment on it? You got the questions and I don't have the answers. I think it's best to take the text at its most obvious meaning, unless there's reason to do otherwise. Noah and people for a long time after him, generations and generations, centuries and centuries, knew nothing about blood transfusions. And I don't see how this passage applies to that, just in my limited understanding. It's talking about what we eat and do not eat. The thing that surprises me about it is that this states that the life is in the blood, something that was not known to medical science for a long time after the book of Genesis was written. As an obvious example, George Washington, one day when he was in his late 60s, was out riding his horse, fell off the horse, injured himself, and his doctors bled him, as was the practice in the 18th century. They drained him of blood several times, and it's supposed that that's probably what killed him, although he had pneumonia. They didn't make a connection between the life and the blood. But here God restricts that, and Jewish people to this day who observe kosher diet want to make sure that that the meat is properly drained of blood before they purchase and eat it. Good question. My tentative answer is I don't see how it can apply to blood transfusions, but I would not try to argue people out of it if that's their conviction. they can live with the consequences or not live for that matter. All right. God now makes covenant, a new covenant with human beings as we make a new start on the earth. And Becky, would you please read verses 8 through 17 of Genesis 9?
Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth.
Stop right there for a minute, please. Notice that this covenant, which is similar to a binding contract in our way of looking at it, is not only with human beings, but with the animals who came out of the ark. I have a question. God says that every human being and every animal will have to reckon for the life of man if they take it. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. And now he makes a covenant with the animals as well as the human beings. How is that reckoning for the life of man and that covenant with the animals upheld by God? Becky will answer that for us.
I'm not even sure I understand the question.
There is a reckoning required for the life of man, whether animal or man takes that life.
Yeah.
Here a covenant is established with animals and human beings.
Okay.
How do the animals know about that covenant?
Oh.
And how does God enforce it with them? That's an obvious question.
But I don't have an answer.
Well, I was hoping you did, because I don't either. But God does include animals in his covenant and animals in his reckoning for killing human beings. But I'll leave that between him and the animal. I just thought I would bring it up, put you on the spot. Now he gives a sign of the covenant. We'll see when we finally get to Abraham and his descendants. He makes a covenant with Abraham and gives a sign to that covenant. But let's read, Becky, beginning of verse 12, what the sign of this covenant is.
And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. The next verse. And God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth.
Okay, the rainbow in the clouds. This doesn't mean this is the first time the rainbow was ever seen. It can be debated whether there was rain before the flood. Earlier in Genesis, it said that a mist came up to water the plants, but it doesn't say there was never rain before the flood, but that's a bit of a sidelight. And of course, God has just said that when the rainbow appears in the clouds, that we human beings should see it and remember the covenant, right? No?
That he will remember.
Right, he says that he will see it and remember the covenant. Does that mean that God might forget that he had made this covenant?
I would think not, no.
Okay, I think not either. To me, it's just a way of reinforcing to us that God will not forget this covenant he has made with all living creatures, that he will not destroy the earth with a flood. And to make sure that we are confident that he doesn't forget, the rainbow is there, and God looks at it and remembers the covenant. Is the way I read it.
I said that I was going to talk about water.
Oh, talk about that H2O.
Um, the rainbows are produced by refraction of light. So a rainbow is a result of the properties of light and the properties of water. And the properties of water are rather unique. There are other things that produce rainbows. You can see them in foil flicks or tin foil, But
they're not actually rainbows.
No.
Refraction.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah.
Back to the Webb telescope.
The Webb telescope.
Yeah.
Was that predicted here in Genesis?
I don't think so. I believe, okay, I've been online watching people's reaction to the Webb telescope, and the Webb has been launched in order to see the beginnings of the universe. And many people are saying, well, you don't need that, right? Just read Genesis, you know what happened. Well, no. We know God created the universe. We know that God created everything. And I believe that when the Webb telescope looks back in time, which it can do because it can see light that has been created bazillions of years ago.
That's Brazilians of years.
Oh, okay. It will be showing us not why or how, but what happened. And I'm roaming all over, but one of the things that comes to mind is there is some debate about whether or not the world was created in 7 days. I argue that the universe was created in a nanosecond. That when the Big Bang happened, every piece of matter, every ounce of energy was there. And with that matter and that energy, all things were created. And there hasn't been anything added to that matter or that energy since that nanosecond when everything came into being. Things have formed, the earth has formed, elements have formed, atoms have formed, photons have formed, all these things have formed, but they've all formed from that initial matter and energy. So I have scattered out my vast knowledge and
starting with the Big Bang.
That's all I got to say.
A couple of things I have to ask you. One, could you give us a formula for comparing a nanosecond with a Brazilian year? And two, you said you were going to talk about water.
Well,
I
went back to look at the nature of water, and I realized that its origin is all tied up with the origin of the universe. And but the rainbow, just every time I see it, I'm reminded that God did not have to make this earth beautiful. We didn't have to be able to see the beauty of this earth. It didn't have to be beautiful. And I think there's something about the nature of God that regards beauty. I mean, even in the Bible, it talks about the beauty of the earth and how it's good. And it didn't have to be that way. An impersonal universe coming together by accident is not created for human beings. It might end up with human beings at some point, theoretically, not actually, but theoretically, if it ended up with human beings, they wouldn't necessarily have any notion of beauty or any exposure to beauty or creativity or any of the attributes of God. That just doesn't come in matter and energy. That's extra added seasoning.
Okay. Thank you, and you've just witnessed an excursus excursus by Becky on physical science and beauty and other stuff, including water.
An exhibit of ignorance.
No. Wisdom.
Okay.
I would say that I don't want to wander too far afield, that a philosophical argument, or maybe even a scientific argument, could be made that beauty was required for life to exist on Earth. But I'm going to cut it off there for this week and get back to Noah. I think you made some good points there. I would point out that so far, and I don't know if the Webb telescope will help us with this, although astronomers have been able to discover a number of what they are calling exoplanets, that is, planets that exist outside our solar system, orbiting other stars. A number have been discovered, but so far, to my knowledge, none that has enough water to sustain life as we have it on Earth. In many ways, we are a favored planet, and the Bible focuses on this planet. Perhaps at a later time in our study, we'll get into the question, is there intelligent life outside of the Earth and our solar system?
And does it matter?
Matter and energy. Or, a deeper question, is there intelligent life on this planet? Well, let's go back to Noah for now and wrap up our study for this week by looking at what was not Noah's finest hour. I'm going to read from verse 18 to the end of chapter 9. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the writer tells us in a parenthesis, Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah was a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk, and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, we're told again that he's the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, by the way, as I think I've mentioned before, this is the first and only time that Noah speaks in this whole account. Verse 25, he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. He also said, Blessed be Yahweh, God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. We're not going to unpack this account until next time, but I'll raise some questions for us to ponder. Who was it, Becky, that saw his father lying naked in the tent and told his brothers about it?
Shem? Canaan is the one that got cursed, but that was the son. So he was the son of, which one?
Ham, verse 18.
Okay.
Ham committed the offense, whatever it was, but his son Canaan is the one who is cursed. Why is that? What exactly was the nature of the offense that Ham committed against his father?
And what does it have to do with us?
And what does it have to do with the Civil War and the period before it, the American Civil War? How about that question? Well, you'll have to just tune in for our next episode of Bible Talk with Ruth and Becky. In case we don't get that posted before New Year's Day, have a happy New Year. And who knows what lies ahead for us in 2022. But remember, don't send money. Bye-bye now.